Hello, everybody, and welcome back to SportsGamer. My name is Toogie, and this is the Wraparound, the show where we take a look at all the goings-on throughout the 5 tiers of the ECL. And it, of course, is playoff season around these parts of ringing in the new year in a big-time way, which means we have a lot to get to in today's edition. Worth noting, of course, because not all the playoff games are played at the same time on the same days. This is being recorded for the morning of Sunday. What even is today's date? The 12th of January. Let's take a look at the top tier. Of course, it is the ECL's highest tier, the Elite Division. And so far this postseason, well, you could take a look. Of course, we have concluded with one of our series. It was Voitimatone pulling off the 5-game victory over Mythics after dropping Game 2, handled their business in the final 3 games, whereas the other 3 series, well, they are still ongoing, and we'll be wrapping up our coverage of each of these series on this upcoming Monday. Hey, you're watching it right now, probably as a preview to Monday's broadcast, Wednesday and Thursday. So by the end of this week, we will know the other 3 teams joining Voitimatone in the Final 4. Parasite up 2-1 on Goons. At times, the games were a little bit closer, but the number 1 seed still looking good. Exon still having a ton of trouble scoring goals against Totarit. And then for the Blackjacks, they had a great chance up 3-0 in Game 2. They were not able to hold on to that win. And now, of course, a disciplinary issue, as you can read about on the website here at sportsgamer.gg, that is taking the key player out of their lineup, that being Kermit, who has been suspended for the rest of this season. So certainly they are up against it. All 3 teams that find themselves trailing currently, well, they have quite the tall task to really come back from here. In terms of the Elite Division scoring, obviously, it's not really too fair right now, is it? Voitimatone, the members of that team having 3 more games played, well, than everybody else, Mythics included as well. So we can't really get too strong of a read on who will be at the top come the end of the first round. I mean, that's when we'll really double check back in next week. Although, need to mention Stammer. 2 games, 2 shutouts against Exon. He has been outstanding. We'll see what happens with Exon in terms of, really continuing that series and trying to get the ball rolling. So again, in terms of the Elite Division, well, it's the fastest bit of coverage that we're going to have here in terms of breaking down tier by tier, because that first round is not yet over. But again, we are bringing the rest of the first round to you in this match week. And of course, everything leads to our live final at Assembly in Helsinki in just about a month's time. And of course, a little bit over a month. We're about 5 weeks away, but hey, what are you going to do? Time is weird like that. But anyway, make sure, as always, sportsgamer.gg to check out all the information for everything going on. And, of course, an attendable event at Assembly later on in this season. Again, just a little bit over a month away. But because we don't have too much to talk about with the Elite Division, we get to move over to our second tier. It is the Pro Division, where a lot more progress has been made. And boy, oh boy, has some progress been made. A set of shocking results, to say the least, as D-Lock lose in 7 games to the Herlev Eagles, and No Street Sports knocked out in 6 by SSK Esports. 2 unbelievable upsets. That is the only way to phrase it. Again, just absolutely shocking. I talked about in the playoff preview editions of the Wraparound, just that idea of, hey, any of these tiers, you never know what upsets might just happen. But for the fact that you had both number 1 seeds, the top team from each group, fall short, just a crazy turn of events. And again, for the Herlev Eagles, SSK Esports, phenomenal accomplishment there. And of course, as we look at the other matchup, Zenigame and Isman Valinta winning that set in just 5 games. A great performance from them in the opening round. Poggers handle their business. They are the highest remaining seed left in the playoffs as they eliminate the Old Timers in 5 games. This matchup we get to cover on broadcast. Rooftech knocking out Gotham Knights in 7, so Gotham Knights will not be making it back to the Elite Division, at least for this season. Nova, now they'll say, hey, it was in number only. They don't consider it an upset, but from a numbers standpoint, it is. The 6 seed in Nova knocking out HC Lugano Esports in 6 games. Autuksit knocking out Björklöven Esport in 5. And then the lone sweep of the first round in the Pro Division, Blackbirds over Aspire. So before we talk about the matchups heading in to the next round, a look at some of the performances here. And if you want to look at someone to perhaps credit for that big-time performance of SSK Esports, full team effort, of course, but Supe was phenomenal. 15 points in the 6 games, although you have to look at Sopoli and Almio as well. 15 points each in 4 games as, again, Blackbirds pulled off the first-round sweep over Aspire. You had Ricardo, it is Ricardo. I always look at it and I'm like, oh, Ricardo 55, but it would still be Ricardo. Nistor still up there for Nova as well. Martindale, a big part of the effort here. Dreamicky, I'm actually not sure. That is a name I haven't had to call out too much, and it shows that, hey, you can talk about the top teams, top players. In terms of the playoffs, it's a different beast, and the Hervlev Eagles very much proved that. Top goal scorer, as you might expect, Zupe was up there with the 8 goals, then Sopoli, Almio, yet again up there, but just some very, very impressive upsets in that first round. Big shout out to King of Apes leading the way amongst defenders. Lorenhavi was up there. Yemu for the Gotham Knights. Good series, not enough to help their team avoid elimination. And for D-Lock, Janza being up there doesn't mean too much, I'm sure, for him at this point, as again, they were knocked out in the first round. For the goaltenders, we primarily look at save percentage around here. It's not everything, but shout out to one Berenitzer. He was phenomenal, 90% save percentage in 6 games. Yonte stepping up for SSK Esports, played 2 games, split result, but great performances there. Hulku up there as well for Isman Valinta, big part of that victory. And that's kind of the theme, right? I said full team effort. You look at someone in terms of the high end of the scoring and, is that the big part of the reason? But no. In the playoffs, it does take that full team effort across the board, and I could continue on just about how stunned I am to see certain teams, especially No Street Sports, after their unbelievable regular season, to be out in round 1 just goes to show the competition level and how difficult it is to find success in the Pro Division postseason. It sets up our quarterfinal matchups, Poggers and SSK. Very intrigued. Again, Poggers, the highest rated seed left, at least from, the standpoint of heading into the playoffs. SSK Esports are going to feel as confident as they ever have. Autuksit and the Hervlev Eagles going to be a very interesting matchup as well with those 2 teams. And again, for Hervlev, it was one of those things where I think they kind of struggled in the regular season compared to what they were capable of. Maybe an instance of being built for the playoffs. Blackbirds and Isman Valinta, very intrigued by that one, again, with Blackbirds pulling off the lone sweep. And then this matchup here, 11 versus 12, Nova and Rutik. I, at this point in time, do not know what matchup we're covering. I won't be disappointed either way. It's one of those situations where there's just not enough time in the day, and I wish I could cover all these series in full, because the Pro Division playoffs, it is very interesting, to say the least, and it's only going to get more interesting as we continue on down the road. So again, Pro Division very much in the spotlight right now. Some shocking upsets and some very interesting matchups heading in to the quarterfinals. We'll move on next to our third tier. It is the Light Division, as we get a look here at the end of the first round. And of course, a ton of matchups to discuss. Project X, quick work over Coup de Grace to kick things off. Another top seed, puck over glass, eliminating German Ice Gladiators in 5. Kikakiria, another sweep. This one over Saucer Hockey. Sune Iko Esport over Technical Disaster in 5. A completely different story here, as you can see, as we go through 5, 6, 7, and 8. Every single one of the higher seeds, Mudu Hockey, Ruti, Kurtamia Vastan, and 6 Sticks Misfits, all advancing. Shout out to Underrated, pushed it to 7 at the very least. We did not get our first upset until Kolakot Esports knocked off Tokuku in 5 games. Mentioned Kolakot as one of those teams where it's like, what are they going to be able to do come playoff time? And well, the answer was a very big first-round upset. Things continued on a positive note for the SSK side of things. Their prospect squad with a sweep over Vitos Vitya. We got another upset, including me winning over Hopsvin Smoothie, easy for me to say, in 6 games, and I still said it wrong. Ace Squad also fell as another higher seed over the Sanioki Noms in 6 games. Hockey Holics, you could see the back half as the numbers got closer. That's where you started seeing more upsets as HC Videlma knocked out Hockey Holics. You had HC Pustertal Esports surviving. You say surviving, it was a sweep over Ice Baron Lauf Gaming, but when you see, again, some of the upsets that had happened, right, with Hopfin Smoothie, A-Squad, Hockey Holics, Macho, a lot of the seeds in a similar standing were knocked off in the first round, so you could say it was surviving, as, again, Macho HC knocked out in 7 by Setelerkiho. That is not the way. I am off on my pronunciations more than normal today. Is Setelerkiho. There we go. Pharmaloggett also knocking out Vita in 5 games. So again, a much more consistent performance from some of the top seeds. I cannot speak, but that's okay. We're going to one-take this bad boy at this point. A lot more of a consistent performance from our top seeds in that opening round, but still quite a few upsets. And what a start, Matthias Gamer for Mudo Hockey, 19 points in 6 games. Miklu for including me, and you also had Tizon for Underrated up there as well with the 19 points in 6 to 7 games. For Project X, I mean, Gonsuk up there, 18 points in 4 games. Absolutely phenomenal. Of course, it was a great opening round performance, a dominant opening round performance for Project X. For the defenseman, elite experience in the past, of course, Tansky leading the way in points with 11 in 7 played, every single one of them being an assist. And when you talk about the top goaltenders as well, let's get a look here at some of these numbers as Masamone was up there for Kurtamia Vastan, 94.37. Tremendous start to the playoffs there. And honestly, quite a few goalies. You had 4 of them, granted, with Fidel, just 2 games played, but 4 goalies at least a 90%. Goes to show, again, it's that full team effort, right? And when the pressure is really on, we have seen some outrageously good goaltending performances throughout the 3 tiers that we have covered thus far. So it sets us up for round number 2. Project X, the number 1 seed, will look to survive a scare that Kolakot Esports could provide, looking for their second upset, including me, Tall Task, taking on Puck Over Glass, Hikakiria and the Seneyoki Noms, Sune Iko Esport and HC Videlma, and of course on the bottom side, Mudu Hockey taking on Setelekerho, Rudy and Pharmaloggett. You have Kurtamia Vastan and HC Pustertal Esports, and 6 Sticks Misfits and SSK Prospects round out that second round. And I have no prediction for this one. I don't think anybody could feel confident with the prediction in this one, as, well, in theory, again, the top 8 teams in the first round, they all advanced. It's interesting. Will they be able to do what the teams who were knocked out, will they be able to do what they weren't able to do? Or are those lower seeded teams just hot at the right time? And will they be able to pull off those big time upsets? Time will tell as we get into the second round of action in our light division tier, but it's been off to as crazy of a start as I think anybody could have anticipated. That brings us to our third, or to our fourth tier, should I say, our third set of completed playoff games. It is our core division, and obviously a lot more to talk about here. Very similar story as to what we saw in Lite. The top 8 seeds all moving on, and all doing so with only one team, that being Dynamo HC, being pushed to a Game 7. Technically, the top 9 as Cape Town Kings also picked up a win in 5. We had to look all the way down to 10 versus 23. Salasiora pulling off the upset over 10-seeded Sopranos. HC Last Resort, a big win for them. A sweep over Armian Curry. Kopibuti falling in 7 to the Karmadillos. And of course, one more upset. Pulp Odyssey, a sweep over Nordic Nosebleed. But for the most part, the higher seeds got the job done, and got it done in pretty quick fashion for the vast majority of these series. And as we take a look here at the numbers through that opening round of the playoffs, Lutiniemi and Mikihiri leading the way for Latunakat with 25 points and 21 points respectively in just 4 games played, which is outstanding. Then you have the likes of Stu Rules for Skyfall and Marul for the Cost Wolves, both on 21 points each. 2 players that we mentioned throughout the regular season, especially Marul for the Cost Wolves. Harton up there for Dynamo HC, somebody else that we mentioned quite a bit. And a pair of really strong performances for Tarun Gasalit from Polyarzinho and Iotaya Lebi as well. When it comes to the defenders, leading the way there, Hagen Hamilton, 17 points in 4 games, and Outbury was up there as well. What an opening round it was for Latunakat. They may just very well be the favorites now moving forward. And of course, with Tiki Taki, you have someone like Nico Riz who was up there. It's always interesting to kind of see what players we mentioned throughout the course of the regular season and to see where they ended up come playoff time and if they were able to repeat those performances. And, you know, for the most part with goalies, we saw some different players taking the big step up. We mentioned Mika quite a bit for Panic on Ice, but there's a lot of names here that were not consistently mentioned throughout the regular season, and now is certainly the time to put some respect on their names here, especially heading into the second round. And again, you can see there, it's just HC Last Resort. With the 2 X's there, got to be honest, not sure how to say the name at the moment. Please inform me, let me know. I always like to get things as close to correctly as I can, although, hey, we've been struggling today, haven't we? But a 95.4% in 4 games. 4 goals against on 83 shots. That is just an ungodly performance. So certainly going to be keeping an eye out on HC Last Resort. We get to those second round matchups. The Silver Sword Griffins will take on Salasiora. Dynamo HC versus HC Last Resort. That's going to be a very fun series to keep an eye on. Maito Yuna and the Karmadillos. Latunakat and Pulp Odyssey. And of course, a bit further down, Tiki Taka and Kella Gold Card HC. Panic on Ice against Rusty X. That's going to be another fun one. Helian Piku Kaupunki and Tarun Gasalit. You saw the performance of the duo out of Tarun Gasalit. That's going to be a fun one to keep an eye out on too. And then the battle of 8 versus 9. Cost Wolves and the Cape Town Kings. I couldn't pick a winner in that one. Cost was off to such a strong start, of course, and had such a strong regular season. But Cape Town as well might just be one of those teams where it's like, okay, we're not necessarily going to have home ice here, but they could be one of those teams that just very much go on that crazy run. So that is the stage set for round 2 of our core division, tier 4 of the ECL ladder, which means we have just 1 tier left to talk about, doesn't it? Hey, the playoff episodes go a little bit faster, of course, especially in these early stages. So hey, it's kind of nice as opposed to some of the hour-long marathons we have trying to cover everything throughout the regular season. Up next, of course, and finally, it is our Neo tier, the new tier, the lowest rated tier that we have here. And yet again, an example of favorites dominating. there were just 2 upsets in this opening round. Of course, best of 5 as opposed to best of 7. The Hannover Indians esports squad over Red Bull Munich Academy in a sweep. And then we also saw Lassen Lampat over the Flying Elbows in 3 games as well. But aside from that, the top seed won in every single matchup, and not too many games being pushed to the full 5 either. Of course, the Typhon veterans had a little bit of a scare, and then in the 16 versus 17 matchup, Hawks HC were also pushed to the limit. In terms of what some of these numbers looked like, shout out to Lucas, who we didn't mention, to my recollection at all in the regular season. 21 points in 5 games. Where was that? It might have been there. Just maybe, the numbers were that much higher for some other people in the regular season. Hodja up there for Hawks. You had Patty for Clowns on Ice. Someone like Nikisuki, we did mention quite a bit throughout the regular season. Sebko for Fallen Rangers. And Mesrine Yak was up there as well. Vader for Brothers in Gaming. But case in point, we have some of those guys that were there, consistently mentioned throughout the regular season. But in the playoffs, other players can just take that next step up and take that attention at the right time. Regular season success is nice, but at the end of the day, it is the playoffs, of course, that matter the most. Shout out to Ranku leading the way for defensemen for Casanova with 11 points in 5 games. And, again, another mix. People like Predator mentioned quite a bit, but a lot of these guys, I mean, come on, I would have remembered Steve Geneva, 7 points in 3 games. Well done. And of course, for the goaltenders, there's more stats than just save percentage, but it is a good indicator in a shorter series. Shout out to the Nordic Knights. I imagine it's Cass. It might be Cass. Let me know. Phenomenal. 92.31%. As opposed to a goalie like Andy Jester, who we saw throughout the regular season. Also, of course, Stevie Harvey for Seattle Kunta. Outstanding. But that's one of my favorite things about these lower tiers, especially. And it really, it can happen in the elite division as well. But in particular with the lower tiers, you just never know what players are going to be like, hey, it's playoffs. I have a second gear to find. I have a third gear to find. Just watch. Second round will be the number 1 seed Fallen Rangers against Hannover Indians Esports. Salsioru taking on Lassen Lampat. Brothers in Gaming going up against Hawks HC. Typhon Veterans and Beastie Boys in the battle of 4 versus 15. And on the bottom side, HC Wolves and Nordic Macabre. Veljaskunta HC and Nordic Knights. The Worn Out Wise Men take on Casanovat. And Clowns on Ice against the Vitapoja Vikings. So continue to keep an eye out on that. I think, despite the faster nature to a pre-produced video like this compared to the regular season, where, again, we're throwing a lot of stats out there, it's worth, shining that spotlight on the key performers as well as we get a look at the stats of the opening round. But it just goes to show, again, that playoffs, an entirely different beast. We talked about some of the success of the top seeds a bit further down. Pro Division, both number 1 seeds eliminated in the first round. That is what makes things here in the ECL so exciting. But hey, that will do it for this one. It feels like we were in fast forward today, but I am perfectly okay with that because it means we are one step closer to getting back into the playoff action. Again, finishing up with the quarterfinal round in the Elite Division, but every other league or every other tier within the ECL into the second round of action. So as always, sportsgamer.gg to keep your eye out on everything going on. And until next time, thank you all for joining me. I'll see you next week to talk about, heading in to those third and crucial rounds throughout these 5 tiers.